amount of time we have. It can all be over, in less than 7 seconds, right? But the best it gets is 7 seconds. So you need to show relevance very early. And if it's in an email, there's a thing called the rule of 18. If we don't nail why this matters to them or why we're relevant to them within the first 18 words, it's unlikely they're going to read anything else. Because again, most people, when they get emails, are actually viewing those emails in the preview screen of either their laptop or the very small amount of screen real estate on a mobile device. So make sure we nail the narrative is really, really important.
I have to agree with the emails. I mean, I've had newsletters going off for ages, and the most successful emails that I've ever sent, and actually everyone on this session might have received or should have received the same email, it's just a simple one-lined word. So I sent an email yesterday, which was actually sent via a platform, but it comes across as personal, and it works really well if you keep it simple. Are you attending the session today? And sometimes something that simple, a one-line sentence and a name, cuts through all that noise, right? I'm not saying use that approach for a new prospect or an existing prospect, but getting to the point quickly, right, Tony? I think it's really important. And you're right, getting someone on the phone, and that's what I do as part of my business. I've only got 7 seconds. I reckon I've got 3 or 4 seconds with a C-level executive. Yeah. So I've got to make sure. Like really, and that's if you get them on the phone anyway, right? Because the problem we're talking about now is how do we, once we start talking to someone, right? How do we get that conversation correct? Getting through to someone is a different kettle of fish, right? And building that relationship and having a referral, like you say, a referral from someone that knows you, and that happened to me a few weeks ago, and I met with a client today, and it was a fantastic way to be introduced without sort of all that noise and who are you, we don't trust you, or instead of like, as opposed to, oh yeah, this client referred you over, they're a great friend of mine, I went to school with their kids, fantastic, right? It doesn't mean I'm going to get the opportunity or close the deal, but it certainly puts me ahead of everyone else, right? So I have to agree, Tony. Yeah, you have to drive and improve results for your prospects, and yeah, I think you're right. I think most sellers do create most of their own problems, but you still have to go in there and have a narrative that solves those, right, and shows interest in that. But my question to you though, Tony, there is still a lot of noise, right? So it's all great. Let's just say we get in there, we have a referral, and everything's running right. Let's pass the prospecting stage. Now let's move on to the actual progression, right? And we've moved on to the second call, second meeting, whatever you want to call it. It's now it's gone from the influencer to one of the key decision makers. Let's say it's a marketing director. But then for whatever reason, that call keeps getting pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And then there's the whole internal, there's something happening. Sorry, we're waiting on budgets or whatever it is, right? There's tons of things that go wrong. Is there anything you can recommend to the audience, to any sales or business owners, salespeople or sales leaders or business owners, in what to do in that stage? You kind of feel like you've covered everything. You feel like you're running on the right track. Is that still go back to the fact that we haven't qualified enough in the first step? We've set a next step. We've qualified. We know there's an issue that needs solving. They're interested in talking to us. They referred us to the right person. But that call never seems to eventuate because, life gets in the way, corporate life gets in the way. Do you have any suggestions in regards to that component, to the actual progressing, trying to get to, you're nearly at that hill, you put your hand over the hill, and you're not quite able to pull yourself up to the top of that hill yet for the next step?
Matt, let's definitely talk about that.
Sure.
Just two things first.
Go ahead.
Paul Ricketts, we can see your question in here, mate, about what you do if you're launching into a new market and you're not a known brand. So I'm going to answer that question in a second before we move on to what Matt's just asked. But I'd just like to finish the prospecting piece off. There's another thing we need to recognize. So on the back of nailing our narrative, we then need to find a way to break through. So if you're selling into corporates and larger organizations, there's a couple of things that are really important. Never be single relationship dependent. Never, ever be single relationship dependent. So if you're getting ghosted by one person, you should be contacting multiple people. Just remember that for any organization to implement something new, they need a strong business case behind the request to do it, and they need consensus from their team. This also goes to what Matt just asked, which we'll cover in a moment. Right. So you got to make sure that you go at multiple people in the organization, 3, 5, 7 people potentially in the organization, run concurrent outreach. And then the other piece that's critically important is you want to use this principle of combo prospecting. You want to pattern interrupt the way that people just ignore sellers by going at them with the right message. You must have the right message about how they can drive improved results in their role and why you're relevant to them, that you've done some homework. But once you've nailed your narrative, phone them, leave a voicemail, send them an email. A couple of days later, phone them again, leave a voicemail. Hey, Mike, I'm just following up. How's Thursday, 10:15? I'll send you a calendar invitation. Then bump the email you'd sent back 2 days earlier. Hey, Mike, just following up. How's Thursday, 10:15? I'll send you a calendar invitation, right? Bump that email back, then send a calendar invitation. And what you've done in 48 hours in what I've just described is you've done 7 touches. And what we know is it takes anywhere between 7 to 13 touches for someone to respond to a seller. But because we've compressed it, because we've compressed this down into 2 little clusters of outreach, rather than 1 touch every 3 or 4 days, anything you do on its own just tends to get ignored. If you're just sending an email once a week, it'll just get ignored, right? You want the person's phone buzzing, dinging, ringing, binging. They go, man, I need to get back to this person or my phone's going to melt down, right? So if your message is right, you'll be okay with this. If your message is all about you and what you sell, you won't be. Okay, so let's just go to Paul's question, then we'll go to what Matt asked. So, Paul, the thing is, most sellers try and lead with who they are and what they do. And if you've got an unknown brand or a weak brand, then maybe that's an issue. But I believe that's a giant mistake, leading with who we are and what we do. What we need to lead with is the prospect's opportunity to drive improved results in their role. And when we run outreach, we need to think about 3 layers. So at the top layer, we're talking about the improved result that they can drive, right? The improved result that they can drive. So in my world, with what I do, if I was talking to a head of sales, right, I'd say, hey, Mike, Mary suggested we have a chat. The reason is I think there could be an opportunity for you to get more of your sellers on target year to date and in a way that de-risks the forecast that you're pushing up to the CEO. And then I ask a question. Do you mind if I ask, what percentage of your reps are on target year to date? How much pipeline coverage have you got in the business for this quarter and next quarter? How does that compare with where you think it needs to be? Definitely makes sense to talk. If they go, well, hang on, how do you think I could drive, more reps on target year to date with with a more accurate forecast? What I then go to the next layer. So I've talked about their opportunity to drive improved results. Next layer is not about me. Next layer is the strategy that gets it. Mike, it's about you being able to hold your account execs to account for self-generating their pipeline gap. Do you mind if I ask? Right? And then I ask another question. So the results, the strategy that gets the results. Okay, but how would I do that? Right? And then what I talk about is what we do at Sales IQ, right? Then I talk about the methodology and the approach to being able to hold sellers to account to self-generate pipeline. What most people do is the reverse. They say, this is who we are and this is what we do. And then here's all of the activities that you could engage in as a customer and working with us. And then we eventually get to the result. But the problem is they stop listening. That takes a lot more than 7 seconds. And we've led with a conversation all about us. So it's a long-winded way of saying, I don't think brand is that important. You absolutely need to have a strong representation of your personal brand in your LinkedIn profile. You need to look credible and consultative, right? And well-connected in your LinkedIn profile. And on your website, right, your website needs to talk about the improved results that you help organizations drive. You need to think about the buyer personas that come and visit your site. Because if you run outreach, what we find is about 75% of the time that anybody is thinking of responding to you, if you nail your narrative well and you find a way to break through and thinking, maybe I'll reply to Paul, what they'll do is they'll go look at your LinkedIn profile or they'll look at your website. So you want that to have credibility. It doesn't matter that you're not sort of the Boeing or Airbus or Coca-Cola or Apple brand. You just need a brand that looks very credible when they look. Just to support this, our Corporate Executive Board and Gartner did a whole bunch of research around what really influences people once they've got a short list, who they're going to go with. Brand was only 18%. So confidence in the brand was only 18%. More than half of the decision weighting was around the engagement experience that they had with the selling organization. So this thing of having a credible point of view on how they can drive improved results in their role in a way that dials down the risk of achieving the result, that's what usually creates winning differentiation. So don't lead with your brand and what you do, because you're creating that objection. Lead with their opportunity to drive an improved result. Hope that was helpful. Hey Matt, just having a look at the at the chat in here. So this is great. So thanks Karen for your comments. Thanks Paul for the feedback.
Yeah.
So Paul, I agree with you, mate. The whole thing of multiple contact points. Mate, and you're right. We need to not be annoying. So I agree with that. So let's just address that point.
Yes.
If your message is about us and what we do, and they're not in the buying window, they're not part of the 3% that are actively looking for that at the moment, then you will be annoying. You're just be an annoying spammer. That's the problem. So many sellers seek to automate some of their selling using sales engagement platforms like Outreach.io and SalesLoft and high velocity selling, these tools that are out there. But if you're loading spam into your Gatling gun, I don't know whether you know what a Gatling gun is. It's that revolving machine gun that you see Arnie use in some of the movies, right? So if you load spam into your Gatling gun of automation, you're just going to burn through your list, get your domain blocked, and be labeled as a spammer. So the message is everything. The message is everything. So if I'm talking to a head of sales, I'm all about them de-risking the hitting of their number with a more accurate forecast, with stronger pipeline coverage in their business. And the way I feel is, well, what sales leader, doesn't care about that? Every sales leader, at times in the year will feel like they age a whole year of their life every quarter, just from the stress of trying to pull deals forward to make the number. And it's all because there's not enough, quality pipeline in the business, as deals stall. So, okay. So Matt, why don't we move on and talk about what do you do once you've got a qualified opportunity that you're seeking to progress and they ghost? Yeah,
sure. I've got one. Can I ask one more question, Tony? I agree with you. And in terms of the touch points and is it harassing individuals, right? Yeah, that is definitely on the mind of many, including my own. And even after I read your book, Tony, Combo Prospecting, which is fantastic, and anyone that needs to understand that the process of multiple touch points and how to get the right, finding the right buyer persona for your organization, as well as the right messaging, read that book. It's just awesome. It changed the way how I did business and how I acted as a business owner. My question is, Tony, so if there was about 2 or 3 business owners that gave me some personal, tips on a bit of humor. So let's just say you are stuck and you're not sure whether or not you have qualified the opportunity, or whatever the reason, right? You felt like this deal was a sure winner. We've covered the reasons to why that person might be ghosting you. What about funny joke emails? So I remember someone advising me to send an email saying, "Oh, look, we're not sure if you've been abducted by aliens, but just tell me where to find them and we'll send them over to you," or something like that. Did you find adding a bit of humor and non-salesy related, nothing about the deal? Did you find that's helped you or some of your clients in the past?
Matt, that's a great question. We absolutely need to be the authentic self in how we go and sell. Right. So if you do humor well and you want to use that in how you sell, great.
Takes practice.
I really love that. But humor is a very dangerous thing. It's difficult to get humor to land well. And Matt, that example you gave is from a lady, good friend of mine called Mary Lou Tyler.
Sure.
She authored the book Predictable Prospecting. So a huge amount of respect for Mary Lou Tyler. And Mary Lou, in her book, Predictable Prospecting, gave some examples of how to try and reboot engagement. And what you just said about, kidnapped by aliens was in her book, right? So
that's where it came from then. Okay,
yeah, so she actually had examples, And if Mary Lou ends up watching this, I apologize if I get this wrong, but I'm just going from memory. But in the book, it'd be like an email that says, hey, Mike, I'm just following up on my previous emails. I usually find when someone doesn't get back to me, they've either been A, abducted by aliens, B, they've fallen in a hole and need a ladder, or C, they've just been really busy and needed a prod, like. Now, the first time someone sees something like that, they might smile, maybe. The second time they see that, they go, oh, these salespeople all did the same course or read the same book.
Yes,
right? So,
it's a very good point.
You definitely need to be you, and using humor with someone that you've never had a conversation with can be really tough, right? So, yeah, okay. Hey, we've got a question here from
Con,
from Con, actually, just from Adrian first. So, I understand that you need to shift them. However, does condensing our contacts into 48 hours create annoying behavior?
Adrian,
that's a great question. So, what I recommend in the book Tech Powered Sales is in B2B selling, there's a couple of things to consider. The more senior the person, the less frequent those sequences, those combinations of channels, those sequences, the less frequent that should be. The more junior the person, the more frequent it can be. The other thing is when you open the engagement in the first week, right, you want to run at least 2 sequences, right? So that'll be at least 7 touches in the first week. In the second week, you wouldn't go to that same frequency. Now, what you do is you up the number of channels, but you're not doing it every 48 hours, right? Because I definitely agree with you. So when you ask yourself the question, how frequent can the combos, in essence, the little concurrent sequences of channels, how frequent can I be running those? The more senior the person, the less frequent. But in your opening week, do the first 2 sequences within 48 hours. You just want to send that message. This is important. I'm relevant to you. Don't ignore me. give me a valid no, or give me some engagement, but don't ignore me, right? Because most people think, oh, it's a seller. They'll just give up. On average, salespeople give up after less than 3 touches of a prospect, right? And yet we know it takes 7 to 13 minimum, right, to get someone to respond. So initially you can condense it and then dial back the frequency, but dial up the number of channels is my advice. Matt, have you got any comments on that? You drive a lot of outreach yourself in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're just focusing on one outreach, let's just say it's my traditional sort of approach. Let's not call it cold calling. Let's call it warm calling. You do the research and everything else. There are now C-level executives out there that will refuse to answer their phone, not to C-level directors of any type, will not answer their phone to people they don't know, right? So the fact that is a major issue. So if you do not apply multiple touches, there's a couple of reasons behind that. And Tony, you definitely explained that very well. But what you're doing is you're pulling that person out of their busy world for a few seconds. They're not answering their phone. They've seen you've left a voice message. They've seen an SMS, and then they've seen something on LinkedIn and an email. Like, hang on a minute, and they'll pull themselves up. What is this? I've got to see this. Now, if you don't have the right compelling message, they'll probably ignore it. But if you have the right messaging, then this person will be dragged out of their busy world, and they will respond to you if it's something of interest, right? So absolutely, yeah, no, you have to have multiple approaches. And yes, you can be annoying. I'll be honest, Tony, when I first implemented that approach, I did annoy a few people, but you're always going to get the odd person that just doesn't like being pushed in that way, right? And then the reality is, if you've got the right message and you do it the right way, and you don't multiply attack them every day with the same approach, it works really, really well, especially SMS actually, because that's a channel that isn't used that often, right?
Yeah, text messaging is very powerful. So
yeah,
so a couple of things to be aware of. If you're going to phone somebody, if you give them a call, and you're not going to be in their address book in their phone, so you'll come up just as a random number. If you don't leave a voicemail message, they may end up blocking the number. I've got friends of mine in their voicemail greeting, they say, hey, if you don't leave a message, I'm going to block this number, as you know, to stop scam and spam callers. So always leave a voicemail is really important. Is really, really important. So, hey, we got a comment here from Con, which I really love. And Con, I love the Clash, mate. What a great band. Should I stay or should I go? That's a really good piece of humor. If you wanted to use that. So yeah, I really like that. So Matt, let's talk about what do we do when people start ghosting us with a deal, a qualified deal we're seeking to progress through to close. Yeah. So
I like that. Yeah, let's go.
okay.
Yep.
Okay. So let me frame that up. There's 4 reasons that deals slip, stall, and die. The first reason is a lack of compelling commercial value in the eyes of the people that actually approve it and sign it off. So you may be selling to somebody, who's very supportive and they'd like the thing that you sell because it makes their life a bit easier within the business, but they've got to go and take this up the line, to the CFO or the CEO for approval. And what inevitably happens is the person we're dealing with says, I've got it, don't ring my boss. Don't talk to my boss. Don't talk to other people. This is my decision. I'll get it approved. And all of a sudden they're not ringing you back. What often happens is they go internally to get approval and they get pushback. Their boss says, hey, Mike, I've got 17 other things I'm being asked to approve right now within the business. We can't do them all. It's not even about the money you want for this. We don't have the bandwidth to do them all. There's a lot of change fatigue in the business at the moment. Why this project over everything else? And if our person does not have a great answer to that question, our deal is dead. So if they've gone quiet, it may be because they sought approval and they didn't nail the issue of compelling commercial value, strong commercial value. And that's why when you open an opportunity, you have to open it in a way where you anchor the deal in the commercial value of change. What's the improved result for the organization and the person in their role? So that's really important. So make sure when you're talking to your prospect, the person you're dealing with in the organization, even say to them, what are you going to say if your boss says, we don't have the bandwidth to do everything at the moment? Why this? They need to be able to finish these 2 sentences. This is essential because, and it pays for itself by. If they've got a 7-minute rambling answer instead of that, your deal's in trouble. And if you're a sales manager watching this, say to your reps that have got a deal in the forecast, when Mary goes to John, the CFO, for approval and John pushes back, how is Mary going to finish these 2 sentences? John, you need to approve this. It's essential because, and it pays for itself by. Really important. Next reason that deals slip, stall, and die is a lack of consensus. As they try and get approval, they get some pushback from other people. People need consensus in an organization for change. So make sure you've covered not just the people that you think say yes, but the people that can say no. Who's going to have to provide some resources to implement the thing, for example, that you're selling? Really important. So compelling commercial value, consensus. And then the third reason that deals slip, stall, and die is a misalignment in process. Often our buyer may not have bought something like this before. They may not have signing authority for this level of spend. Maybe they got told that they had a budget to go do something, but what they didn't realize themselves internally is that didn't mean they had the approval to go spend it, right? They've got to go back with a business case to justify releasing the budget. They didn't understand that they needed to attach a business case, with the request. So you need to do a thing I call create a mutual plan. Some people call it a close plan or a success plan or a project alignment plan or a mutual plan, but work out with the person you're selling to, what are all of the things that need to happen between now all the way through to the deal actually being closed, right? So that there's no surprises, because that's the 4th reason deals slip, stall, and die is some kind of nasty surprise. The person we're dealing with leaves, a new CFO joins the business, they get acquired, they post bad results. COVID hits, like some nasty surprise happens. And although you'll feel like you can't manage the nasty surprise thing, what we know is that time kills deals, and the longer a deal drags on, the higher the risk. And if you can ensure that there's compelling commercial value in change, and you've secured consensus with the key stakeholders, so I never want to be selling just to one person. And then the third piece is you've created a mutual plan, an alignment plan with your prospect on what both organizations need to do